everybody, Web C here, and welcome to the Late Night Load with Web C. Looks like I'm flying solo tonight. I was gonna have one of my buddies come to hang out with me. It's just we are working on getting some things taken care of on his end. There's just some technical difficulties linking up. It's all right though. We're gonna get that figured out. But first, I gotta send off a link to the live real quick. So let me send that out. Copy link. Let me send that out. All right, that has been sent. Here we go. Now we're good. Now we're moving. I'm going to screen share. Oh. Why can you not connect to my phone screen? We're going to have to go back and try again. Technical errors. Technical errors. All right. Okay. Now it's operating. Here we are. Blah, 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 blah. Nothing? You some bitch. All right, well, the audio that I was going to share with you all tonight is not playing. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to do tonight. We are going to start off reading this article that I have to read with everybody or to go along with. Hold on. Reached a key milestone in learning how to reverse aging. It's been 13 years in the making, but Dr. David Sinclair and his colleagues have finally answered the question of what drives aging. In a study published January 12th in Cell, Sinclair, a professional of genetics and co-director of the Paul F. Glenn Center for Biology of Aging Research at Harvard Medical School, describes a groundbreaking aging clock that can speed up or reverse the aging of cells. Scientists study aging have debated what drives the process of senescence in cells, and primarily focused on the mutations of the DNA that can, over time, mess up a cell's normal operation and trigger the process of cell death. But that theory wasn't supported by the fact that older people's cells often were not riddled with mutations, and that animals or people harboring a higher burden of mutated cells don't seem to age prematurely. Sinclair therefore then focused on another part of the genome called the epigenome. Since all cells have the same DNA blueprint, the epigenome is what makes the skin cells turn into skin cells and brain cells into brain cells. Where am I? Brain cells into brain cells. It does this by providing different instructions to different cells for which genes to turn on and which to keep silent. Epigenetics is similar to instructions dressmakers rely on, from patterns to create shirts, pants, or jackets. The starting fabric is the same, but the pattern determines what shape and function the final article of clothing takes. With cells, the epigenetic instructions lead to cells with different physical structures and functions in a process called differentiation. In the magazine The Cell, the paper Sinclair and his team report that not only can they age mice on an accelerated timeline, but they can also reverse the effects of that aging and restore some of the biological signs of youthfulness to the animals. That reversibility makes a strong case for the fact that the main drivers of aging aren't mutations to the DNA, but miscues in the epigenetic instructions that somehow go awry. Sinclair has long proposed that aging is the result of losing critical instructions that cells need to continue functioning, in what he calls the information theory of aging. Underlying aging is information that is lost in cells, not just the accumulation of damage, he says. That's a paradigm shift in how to think about aging. His latest results seem to support that theory. It's similar to the way software programs operate off hardware, but sometimes become corrupt and need a reboot, says Sinclair. If the case of aging was because a cell became full of mutations, then age reversal would not be possible, he says. But by showing that we can reverse the aging process, that shows that the system is intact, that there is a backup copy, and the software needs to be rebooted. In the mice, he and the team develop a way to reboot cells to restart the backup copy of epigenetic instructions, essentially erasing the corrupted signals that put the cells on the path toward aging. They mimic the effects of aging on the epigenetic by introducing breaks in the DNA of young mice. Outside of the lab, epigenetic changes can be driven by a number of things, including smoking, exposure to pollution, and chemicals. Once aged in this way, with a matter of weeks, Sinclair saw that the mice began to show signs of old age, including gray fur, lower body weight despite unaltered diet, reduced activity, increased fertility. Rebooting came in the form of a gene therapy involving 3 genes that instruct cells to reprogram themselves. In the case of the mice, the instructions guided the cells to restart the epigenetic changes that define their identity as, for example, kidneys, skin cells, 2 cell types that are prone to the effects of aging. These genes came from the suite of so-called Yamanaka stem cell factors, a set of 4 genes that Nobel scientist Shinya Yamanaka in 2006 discovered can turn back the clock on adult cells to their embryonic stem cell state so they can start their development or differentiation process all over again. Sinclair didn't want to completely erase the cell's epigenetic history, just reboot it enough to reset the epigenetic instructions using 3 of the 4 factors turned back the clock about 57%, enough to make the mice useful again. Not making stem cells, but turning back the clock so they can regain their identity, says Sinclair. I've been really surprised by how universally it works. We haven't found a cell type yet that we can't age forward and backwards. Rejuvenating cells in mice is one thing, but will the process work in humans? That's Sinclair's next step, and his team is already testing the system in non-human primates. The researchers are attaching a biological switch that would allow them to turn the clock on and off by tying the activation of the reprogramming genes to an antibiotic dioxysilene. Giving the animals the dioxysilene would start reversing the clock, and stopping the drug would halt the process. Sinclair is currently lab testing the system with human neurons, skin, and fibroblast cells, which contribute to connective tissues. In 2020, Sinclair reported that in mice, the process restored vision. In older animals, the current results showed the system can apply to not just one tissue or organ, but the entire animal. He anticipates eye disease will be the very first condition used to test this aging reversal in people, since the gene therapy can be injected directly into the eye area. We think of the process behind aging and disease related to aging as irreversible, says Sinclair. In the case of the eye, there is the misconception that you need to regrow new nerves. But in some cases, the existing cells are just not functioning. So if you reboot them, they're fine. It's a new way to think about medicine. Wow, this is just riveting. That could mean that a host of diseases, including chronic conditions such as heart disease and even neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, could be treated in large part by reversing the aging process. That leads to them. Even before that happens, the process could be an important new tool for researchers studying these diseases. In most cases, scientists rely on young animals or tissues. The model diseases of aging, which doesn't always faithfully reproduce the condition of aging. The new system makes the mice very old rapidly, so we can, for example, make human brain tissue the equivalent of what you would find in a 70-year-old, use those in a mouse model to study Alzheimer's disease that way, Sinclair says. Okay, so, beyond that, the implications of being able to age and rejuvenate tissues, organs, or even entire animals or people are mind-bending. Sinclair has rejuvenated the eye nerves multiple times, which raise more existential questions for bioethicists and society of considering what it would mean to continually rewind the clock on aging. This study is just the first step in redefining what it means to age, and Sinclair is the first to acknowledge that it raises more questions than answers. We don't understand how rejuvenation really works, but we know it works, he says. We can use it to rejuvenate parts of the body and hopefully make medicines that will be revolutionary. Now, when I see an older person, I don't look at them as old. I just look at them as someone whose systems need to be rebooted. It's no longer a question of if rejuvenation is possible, but a question of when. All right. All right, so yeah, we can end it there. I got some other stuff to show you. Here is a picture, courtesy of Newsweek, probably NASA as well. So that's the next thing. Tonight, Leprechaun reported in, and he told me he did a bunch of research on comets and what they were used for in the past. As oldest recorded on history for societal use, back in, I think he said somewhere around 44 AD, when Caesar died, his son used a comet that passed overhead during the Caesar's the games of Rome, like not the Olympics, but like what kind of became the Olympics, the original games of the emperor. Those games, his son said, "Look, my father, he's come to watch over us as we celebrate his life." And so he really made his followers and everybody in his empire believe that was his father, instead of it just being a rock in space. So there's a bunch of things like that, and it correlates. And like me and Leprechaun were just having a really long conversation about it. We were talking about how it all correlates between it correlates between the other things that they used to use, as far as the 14, 15, 1300s, those time periods with the Spanish conquistadors. If they didn't get their way, they would use astrology to scare the people that they were visiting, or in South America and in the islands and stuff. They would tell them, if you don't do this at such and such date, then I'll turn the moon red. And then when a blood moon came by, because they knew astrology, but they assumed that the tribes people didn't, and that it would scare the tribes people, and blah blah blah. So that was cool. And then what that tied into is a link of us talking about. We got into a real deep conversation, just talked about moving from there. I think we moved into like population and what were thoughts on like how the society controlling populations and stuff, and how these meteors, that if they actually do hit the earth, they cause upheaval. And then we were talking about like told them about my theory about like how Pangea was actually split apart by meteors, and they were the pace of the continents moving apart from each other was rapidly sped up by the meteors that hit the earth between 200,000 or 200 million years ago and now. There was a few meteors that hit the earth that were really big ones, and I think those ones really caused the earth's continents to really push apart faster than people think. And the reason why I had those concepts and those ideas for that was because when we look at the when we look at those things, we see the continents, like where they drifted apart from each other. Like, so they'll like one will be like this, and then they drift apart, and then the shapes are still there. But what also is still there is like the perfect ridges of everything, like all lines up. It shouldn't line up that well if it's been so much longer than they say it is. So like, one of my theories about that is that it went further. And then we led into like we were talking about like how if you live closer to the North Pole, depending on your culture, you could have much lighter complexion. But if you were that same culture and you moved towards the middle of the equator part of the Earth, you would become much darker, based on your like exposure to sunlight and weather and climate temperatures and stuff like that. And we were debating on what was the time period between such a change, like what would cause such a change between like a light colored person becoming really dark from moving to somewhere where there's more sunlight during the day, or just people not migrating to like their same climate. Like, so if you migrate out of your climate, would you see a change in yourself? And we do, on some scales, we do see a change in some people and we don't. And like we went back and forth and we were talking about it, and stuff like that. And I pointed out, like, because I had grown up half of my childhood down south in Tennessee and I'd lived half up here in Minnesota. So I was like, when I was down in Tennessee, a lot of my relatives were black and they were really dark people. And then I come up here and, my relatives up here that were black, a lot lighter skinned, nothing wrong with it. Just saying, like, it's clear. You can clearly see that. And then even those relatives that growing up down south, when they lived down south, they experienced more sunlight and absorbed more melanin. And then up here, they don't experience as much sunlight. They didn't absorb as much melanin, because I had a cousin, his name's Rashad, and he's got the native and black in him, and it really, yeah, when he goes between living up here and down there, you could really see the difference. But and Craig was talking about that. He said that one of his daughters went down to Florida and came back up, and she had much darker complexion after being down there for a while and then coming up here. And then by like the end of winter, her complexion will be much lighter because she spent more time inside than outside, type of deal. Which I was like, oh, okay, So we were talking about that, and then moving on from that, we just wanted everybody to know that, like, this is just kind of what the show's going to evolve into. Is we're going to go out and find things to talk about and report on, and then we're going to come back and talk about it, and then we'll divulge and we'll go off on tangents. Trust me, me and Leprechaun are going to be great at that. You guys are going to love that when we get into doing that on live. So hopefully that'll come sooner than later, and once it does, it'll be super awesome. It'll be really fun, and like I said, so we'll go off on tangents, like, so those tangents will lead off on crazy things and stuff, right? So another thing we were talking about was like the population rate. So we were just like addressing the problem of like with the article I just read, with the longevity of life being able to be adjusted, as the guy says, it can so willingly be adjusted. We were talking about how like one way to view it is greed and money, and powerful people are going to abuse it. And the other way that I thought would be is, like, I was thinking cyberpunk, like there's already people who create hacked CRISPR. They call them gene hackers. And I was like, I brought them up in 44 BC. Okay, Craig was saying that that comment for Caesar and his son and everything was back in 44 BC. Cool. So that gives you like an idea of how far it takes me to see things. And then so we were just talking about those things, and so it just gets off on that tangent. So we were like, I was like, well, here in America, our birth rate's like 1.76, and I was like, guys like me and you, where we have like 4 kids, well, we're doing that opposite job, but there's a whole bunch of people that are only having 1 kid. So like that's where you get that 1.76 number from, is not everybody's making 2 kids or 3 kids. So because if we had a birth rate of 3, then we would be having a positive birth rate. But right now, we have a negative birth rate. Any birth rate under 2 is negative, because it takes 2 people to make 1 child. It takes 2 people to make a second child. It takes 2 people to make a third child. So once you've made 2 children with your spouse, you have equalized it, because you each have reproduced 1 for yourselves. But then you would have to make another kid, a third child, to have said that you've reproduced beyond the negative. And so like there's some countries where like their population rate, like Japan, is like at 0.5, not even at a 5, just 0.5. They're not having enough children. They're having a big collapse right now. And then there's China, which it sounds like they have so many people, billions of people, but they're not having kids right now. So China actually is also experiencing a negative birth rate, which they've been projected by some of the smartest and richest people in the world that's not going to be a good thing for China in the next 20 to 30 years here. And so they're in the process of trying to course correct it. Where like we were talking about, I think I said like I read some articles where they're talking about they pay people to actually come or they pay Chinese people to make more babies now. As to when we were growing up as kids, they were telling Chinese people you can't have more than one kid. Like there was a rule, like one kid. Too many people, one kid. And now there's not enough people, you need to have three kids, type of deal. It's kind of weird like that. So they're trying to control the population without overcorrecting too much because you get to the point where, you know, like in my mom's family, her dad had 7 brothers and sisters, I think, or something like that. There's a lot of family. And then my buddy Leprechaun here, he's the only child, you know. So there's those dynamics too, you know, to look at as like the dichotomy of things is, you know, so many families did do those things. Moving on, other things to talk about in the sciencey world and the world of uh, conspiracy cryptids and UFOs and all those fun things. Um, just recently, um, there have been there's been some cryptid sightings lately, and the warnings that come with these cryptid sightings are pretty crazy. But one cryptid to think about and to get excited about is in Papua New Guinea. The Tasmanian tiger may actually still be alive, maybe living and breathing and thriving in Papua New Guinea because there's just a place where they naturally evolved in those places. They know that animal naturally evolved there, and they also know that in that part of the world there's no predators for that animal, so it should have a thriving, like, besides humans killing it, it should have a thriving life source. So that's one of the animals. And then there's a mantid a mantid cryptid that is hanging around in New Mexico, Arizona area right now. People are seeing it. It's half to a third the size of a car, and people are recording it and filming it and stuff. It's like chasing people and shit. Like a cop car had to like cut it off or whatever to save somebody from getting chased on a motorcycle. It's pretty crazy. And then I saw it. I was just like, it looked weird. I didn't know if it was CGI or anything, but it was clear enough to where you could tell that creature was a creature. It was not. It didn't look like a human in a suit and nothing like that. So it was either some really good green screen and CGI, or it was just like it was an actual mantid, which those are crazy. I've heard that they can flay you alive, so I wouldn't go near them. That's my theory on it. Unless you've got sharp things too, where you can stop them from doing things to you. Other cryptids that have been proven true in the last few years was the sloth, the giant sloth down in South America. That was a real cryptid. And then the chupacabra. We actually have caught in, I think, 12 now in society all over the world. The chupacabra is, they say it's interdimensional or extra dimensional, or it can teleport or phase in and out of existence. But they said what it is it's a dog cryptid, and it feeds kind of like a vampire on the blood of livestock, whether it be a chicken, a goat, a cow, or a horse. I think those are the 4 things that it has attacked. And I don't know what it does in the wild, if it finds animals in the wild, what kind of animals it goes after, things like that. But then as they've caught some of them just like look like some real ugly, deformed, hairless dogs, and then some of them like extra teeth and elongated muzzles and really long, wiry legs and stuff like that. Look like they're malnutritioned. Blood. Yep, they going after that. So yeah. Other than what else is going on in there? So for cryptids, that's what I know right now for cryptids. So keep an eye out for those things. Pretty scary looking. A good place to go to start researching cryptids, I would go and research everything to do with Skinwalker Ranch. They don't talk a lot about cryptids on purpose. They end up bringing them up as they go through other things, and it's pretty interesting. And then they found some other interesting things recently on the actual show Ghostwalkers Ranch or whatever. But I'm not talking about just like the show. Go actually like do some digging around that area. Like go type in, go look up some of the cities in that area and look up some of the crazy stuff people report seeing and stuff in that area. Not nobody to deal with the ranch itself. I'm just talking about like around in that area. There's some crazy things that they talk and report about. And then all those people, when those cameras show up for that show, those people all go in their houses and don't talk to nobody. But they'll, for some reason, they'll go online on YouTube and they'll all post a video on YouTube talking about what they've seen and stuff. And then they won't talk about it once the cameras show up. So that's another one of those. So, more so, they want people to know that's out there, but they don't want people trampling all over their stuff. And then let's see. Leprechaun says that ranch has amazing story behind it. It's very much worth looking into. Damn right. I know it's worth looking into. That's why I brought it up. No. So, but that's where I think a lot of good cryptid details can come from. You can get a good grasp on what you're dealing with when you deal with cryptids, because that's a lot of what they deal with. The paranormal that's happening there, it's very cryptid related. And then up here in I want to say it was Nebraska or northern Texas, there was just a red-haired Bigfoot sighting just recently here. And it was a very good video footage and everything. So if you guys go look that up, northern Texas, southern Nebraska, red-haired Bigfoot sighting. There's 3 different ones. 2 of them have really good footage. One of them is a mother Bigfoot dragging her baby Bigfoot across a river. She's like letting the baby swim in the water as she drags it through. Real cute picture videos. Definitely, it's clearly a Bigfoot in that one, because honestly, ain't no human standing in water that deep and still being able to walk that fast across the water. It's just physics are working against everything in there for that. So think about that. Go so you can go look at that one. And then the other one, they're in kind of like not really a swamp, or like a marsh, kind of like a marsh, a good wooded marsh. And you can just see a red. It peeks out, and then it pulls itself back, and then it like takes 3 full steps and then disappears behind another tree. And it's like almost as if like it went through one portal, came into Earth through a portal, and then took 5 steps and went out through another portal. You don't see anything. It's just like it uses the trees or something as a portal. So yeah. Okay, so Leprechaun asks, do I think if there could be a tie between Bigfoots and giants? So that's really funny you asked that, because I have a weird thing about apex apex hominids, apes, and humans. So one of my theories on evolution, you can say you don't believe in evolution, that's fine. But for evolution theories, what I think about is when you go to different parts of the world and you look at the different great apes of those parts of the world and the different monkeys of those parts of the world, humans resemble those apes in those parts of the world. It's really weird. I don't know what to say of it. All I'm saying is like those rich old white people from Europe look like orangutans, and those short, cute, skinny people from Asia look like those little capuchin monkeys. And same thing with down south, they're little monkeys, and lemurs and shit in Africa. Like people look like monkeys. If you really just sit there and like try to genealogically place people with what monkeys they look like, it's really crazy. So I have this theory that we didn't just evolve from one monkey. I think we all we're genetically all pulled out from all the different monkeys at some point or another. Like, and then I don't know what we were crossbred with or whatever to create humanity, but I really feel like we all just come from different types of monkeys. So that's where I feel like we're coming from. A lot of people might be insulted from that concept, but I feel like if you line it up, it kind of looks right. Kind of, you know, it's a theory. It's a working theory I have that ties into my Pangea theory, that ties into a couple other things. But that's just like I keep reading this article about Neanderthals. They went extinct, but they're not really extinct because their genetics live in modern man. Well, we didn't. Oh man, like it's just like it's one of those things that just really like pulls me out these different ways. Like, okay, you can't sit there and say it went extinct if the genetics are still alive today. Okay, what it is yes, we have some humans that look like Neanderthals. Okay, I had a shop teacher in high school. Dude looked like a knuckle dragger. All right, that's all I gotta say about that. Like he Grug, you know. He's a great guy, really honest, cool, upfront guy, super amazing teacher. But yeah, dude, he looked like he could tote around a big club and or a big club and bonk somebody on the head and drag them back to their cave. I'm okay, but but so yeah, my thought process for that is that's what I think about it. So back to what you were saying is what do I think about the Bigfoots and giants and stuff like that? It's interesting because I think Bigfoot is the ape, the ape of the Native American species, like whatever was here for apes in North America. I think it might have been Bigfoot, and that's what we call him, Bigfoot or Anthropithecus or whatever we try to call him. I think that is the connection for the Native Americans here in North America for their ancestral ape species. Just like the baboon and the gorilla are in Africa, the orangutans are all through Europe. The I don't know, man. I don't really know. So that's why I say it like that is like it's just a theory. It's just a thought. I don't want people to think that I'm like losing my mind or going against science. I just want everybody to know, like, yeah, sometimes I just sit there and lose my stuff just thinking about those things and stuff. So, or I don't lose my stuff. I'm always lost in thought about that type of stuff. Whether I'm building a model or hanging out with the guys or whatever, I'll just random thoughts will pop up and we'll definitely have some weird conversations where that stuff will just come in and we'll be like, yep, definitely. So I don't know what else to think about it, but as for Bigfoots today, I think they're still alive. They're a healthy population, and there's either multiple tribes, and they don't like to be messed with. They just don't want to be bothered, and that's why we don't see them. Okay, they've devised ways to not be bothered, and we can't bother them. It just seems like the last two large groups of people that went out Bigfoot hunting, one group saw nothing. The other group, they didn't get such a warm welcome in the area they went. Like they really like invaded on some Bigfoot territory, and the Bigfoots weren't happy. They started throwing like 300-pound boulders at the tents and stuff. Like people, they woke up the next day and they saw the rocks and the trees and the branches that were being thrown at their cabins and stuff that they were camping in. And they were like, wow, if we would have been sleeping in like regular tents, this stuff would have killed us. They were sleeping in like box trailers and actual wooden log cabins and stuff. But if they would have been sleeping in like a pop-up tent that you just pop up on the ground, oh yeah, they'd have been dead. They'd have been roasty toasties, pretty flat people. So that's just one experience too. And then up here in northern Minnesota, up by the reservations where my family's from, my Native American side of my family, there are tribes up here that talk about and actually interact with the Bigfoot. We don't have like a name for it or anything. We just call it the hairy man. But mermaids. I'll get on to ugly fuckers in just a minute. Uh, but So the Native Americans up north interact with the Bigfoot population. And the mother Bigfoots up there will leave the young in certain yards of people they feel will protect the young, and they'll leave them there so they can go hunting, and they'll come back and get their young and stuff. It's really weird, but yeah, they've come inside and they've sat down. There's 2 videos, and once again, really crappy video footage because it was recorded back in like the early 2000s, 20 years ago. Cell phone videos were really bad, but there was a video that came from the northern reservations, I think up by it wasn't my family's exact reservation, but it was up close to my family's reservation. I don't know what the other one up there is called. Because there's like Hinckley, Mille Lacs, and then mine's called White Earth, and then there's one like right, it's like Prior Lake or something like that. Anyways, around there, right by the because my family's tribe's reservation is right on the western side of the Boundary Waters National Park Reserve, or whatever, the state park reserve. I'm not sure if it's state or national, but the Boundary Waters Park Reserve is right up there. Okay, so my niece wants me to switch to a random subject and talk about mermaids. All right, well, I refer to them as ugly fuckers. Okay, the reason why is because they're ugly. They don't look like humans to a certain extent, and the whole Little Mermaid Disney story is all fake. It's all just to pull the wool over your eyes. But mermaids are real, and there's 5 different tribes on Earth that are known, I believe. 5. There's a tribe in the Gulf of Mexico. There's a tribe out of California somewhere, off of the coast of California, and then down by Panama, there's a tribe. There's a tribe in Africa that they just had like a big story on. That tribe, those ones have like, those ones can get angry. And then there's a tribe in, I think, between Asia and Russia, like, China and Russia, somewhere around there, there's a tribe of underwater unfriendlies. I won't say any names, but I'm close to some people who are in the Navy, and those people that I've been close to in the Navy have they have all confirmed the existence of ugly fuckers. That's all they call them. That's why I refer to them that way as well. But I won't say names of who I know, who I've known. But and then it's just like I've also got friends who are in search and rescue on helicopters and stuff, and they say they've never seen a UFO in their life. They say shit don't exist. So I don't know if he's been signed a contract to say that stuff or what, but all I'm saying is, when you get close enough to a person who's in the military, they'll tell you some stuff, even if they're not supposed to, having a couple drinks too many, and you just magically get on the conversation of like UFOs and stuff. And then the guy just looks at you and goes, "I've seen a mermaid." And then you look at him and you go, "What?" He goes, "It's not what you think," So that was what the conversation was, man. I was just sitting there one day, and I was like, we were sitting around a fire, and he just straight up looked over at me and said, "I've seen a mermaid." And I was like, wow. I was like, well, what was the experience? He said it was not friendly. He said they were in tanks, so they were cut off from being able to contact the rest of their group or whatever. And he said they were under observation, and they looked as if they were primitive, very primitive. Obviously, I mean, like they're underwater, so they can't have like super technology and stuff like that. But he made it very clear, like they did not have a grasp of metallurgies and stuff like that. They use stone and sticks and stuff still, all stuff that could be fashioned from underwater. So that's what I know about the mermaid lore on Earth right now and where that sits, kind of thing. Along with we just did that Hellier stuff with the goblins and everything, and that's like that's also ties in with that. The mermaids are said to be the aquatic version of the goblins. This is one way to describe that. So they don't necessarily story tie into each other, but just saying, like, because we just did a big 14, 15 episode series on that. So thinking back on all that, yeah, man, the goblins were crazy and fun to get into. Too bad they didn't stay around long enough to where they could see some. It would have been pretty cool if they would have not been so crazy. What's Leprechaun saying now? There's actually a story about the Soviets discovering what they called aliens, but I would refer to this underwater beings in the deepest lake in the world. I've heard some things about that too. And yeah, so that ties into the whole UFOs, UAPs, and how that some of them go underwater. They say that one of the theories is that the Atlantis, the inhabitants moved from where the wreckage was to a new place to save themselves and keep secrecy, and that they had built everything completely underwater this time, and that their ships are controlled and can go from water to air to space. And then there's another one that's an inner Earth theory. We were touched on that a little bit last week, but the inner Earth theory is that, once again, UFOs, the reason why they're designed the way they are is so that they can squeeze through the crust of the Earth and get out, and then they can travel beyond our reaches. I'm okay with that process. I'm okay with that thought process. I like both of them. Those are two good theories. I won't argue against either one of them, but they both sound somewhat on the lines of where could be creditable. I had a big dinner. I had like the biggest plate of freaking spaghetti tonight. Oh man, just like only eating one meal a day type of thing, and trying to lose weight and all that shit. So yeah, I'm burping now, like getting all that the digestion gases out of me. So yeah, that's it for the night, guys. I mean, it's been I just talked my butt off, you guys. So that's it. Have a great night. That's all the stuff I got to talk about for now. And we will see you guys later. Have a great time. Tomorrow is Friday Night Kit Bash. I don't know what I'm building. But I'll be working on something tomorrow night for Friday Night Kit Bash, and we will have an episode of the Late Night Load on Friday night. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being in the chats over there, Leprechaun, and whoever else stopped by to hang out. Thank you as well. And we're going to get out of here.